Oh, that's great, Ed. Thank you. Perfect.
Nice.
All right, can we start with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge it. We'll stand up. Okay. The Pledge of Allegiance to
Allegiance to the
the
flag
flag of the
of the
United
United
States
States of America
America,
and to the republic
for which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands, one nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's see if I remember how to do this. Roll call, Shannon, please.
Sure. Jane Flanagan,
Here.
Kyle Elliott, Felix Raimondo,
Present.
Carol Smith,
Yes.
and Janine Riley.
Okay, and do we have anybody for public comment, Ed? Okay. And then we will go on to the minutes from the last meeting. And again, I'd like to say thank you, Shannon. I really do appreciate the minutes having more detail. I know this is a fairly recent way you're doing this, I think the last few meetings, but it makes reviewing the booklet a lot easier. So thank you for doing that. It is appreciated. Does anyone have any questions from the previous meeting's minutes?
No.
I do. It's in regards to escrow balances. I had expressed concerns on the negative escrow balance for Echo Ridge, but also East 12th Avenue and how this occurred. And we said we would get I asked for an intermediate update once the staff met, because that was the response. It was going to be at a staff meeting, and they were going to discuss it then on a path forward, and intermediate update was requested and never received. So I'm going to reflect that the escrow balance is requested in an intermediate updating to the board post the staff meeting. I want that captured in the minutes because it never happened.
Are there any other comments on that?
No.
Okay, so reflected. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
Yep.
I'll second it as amended.
Roll call, Shannon?
Jane Flanagan,
Yes.
Felix Raimondo,
Yes.
Carol Smith.
Yes. Okay, we go to the financial report. I was wondering, are you, Shannon, are you going to go over the memo from Kathy or make any, is someone going, I'd like somebody maybe to give a brief summary of that for the rest of the board members. I've discussed it with you, and I know you've sent some emails, but are there any questions, I guess I should ask, on the memo and the status of that from Kathy that folks are concerned about? This has to do with the audit and the report.
Harry, do you want to talk about it or do you want me to talk about it?
Well, you could start off, and if necessary, I can add a few things for you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we will talk about it. Do you want to do the bills first or you want to do the memo from Kathy?
The memo is fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd say start with the memo.
All right. So
Yep.
Kathy and I have been going back and forth with PMRS about the pension, and we finally got a live person, and we had thought that we were going to get the information sooner rather than later. So Kathy was holding off on the audit. But it looks like we are not going to really get any information until the middle of August. So we normally have to file the DCDE report by June 30th.
Mm-hmm.
So the options are to do a partial financial statement excluding the pension piece and amending it later, or we could wait and file with the DCDE later. And there are no penalties to file late. It just, and the last time that we filed late was in 2009. So we have to decide whether we're going to do a, financial statement and amend it later, or if we want to hold off and do the audit completely after we get the pension information.
And what is Kathy's recommendation?
Kathy believes that we should hold off and wait and file the DCDE late.
Yeah.
Because there are no penalties.
I just wanted the board to be aware of this. The finance committee has discussed this in working sessions. We do believe that's best, but I wanted it presented to the board so they could be aware. This is not only our situation, it's many areas due to COVID. I don't think this really has any impact in our functioning. The audit is done, except for that portion. So I just wanted everybody to have full awareness.
I agree that it seems better to file the full report at the correct time when we have all the information. Do we have to file for any type of extension like you do with taxes, or no?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So do we need a motion on that, Shannon?
I don't know, Lauren, is that something we need a motion on? Mike?
No, because normally what you do is you make a motion to accept the audit. And that once the audit is accepted, then everybody just goes and does what they need to do as far as getting it filed. You're not doing that right now because we're missing the PMRS information, so there's no need for a formal motion. We're just not taking any action on the audit right now.
Correct. Okay, so we'll get to vote on it when it comes up at its
Yep.
time. Okay, great. Thanks for that clarity. Okay.
And Shannon, speak to the credit.
The other two? Yep. Okay, so we got 2 requests from customers who both received credits from Aqua because their bill was wrong. So the one for One Tower Bridge, Aqua actually credited their account for 188,000 gallons, which would equate to $1,245 off of their bill based on the consumption rate of $3.30 per thousand. Or actually, is that West Punjab? Hold on one second. So the credit ends up being $12,045 for one tower, and the other one for 335 West Firth is $155 because they were credited 47,000 gallons on their Aqua bill. So we're asking the board for approval to give these customers their credits based on the Aqua credit.
And I was trying to read through the emails. They kind of blended together, so I got a little turned around. But for the One Tower Bridge, Aqua gave them, you said 188,700.
188, yes.
And that cost that you're showing is $6.06 per 1,000 gallons.
Okay, yeah, so that's the West Conshohocken rate. Yep, that's their consumption rate, $6.60
Yeah, that's West
per thousand.
County.
And do we
Mhm.
Yeah,
understand
West
why?
County.
We understand why they received the credit from from Aqua.
So there are just the only information that we really got from Aqua was that the bill was incorrect. That was the only.
Yeah, but is it incorrect on a dollar amount or on a flow amount?
So it was on a flow. That was why they said that they credited them 188,000 gallons on their Aqua report or on their Aqua bill.
Yeah, it was adjusted flow.
Yeah, it was their flow. Yeah.
And they gave no other reason, like was it a meter issue or anything else to give detail?
No, all they said
Quite
was
frank-
February 18th.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Carol.
Well, quite frankly, we've never gotten any detailed response from Aqua in our past, Felix, when we've
Right.
asked about the stone rows. We've never gotten any detailed information from Aqua, except whether they've turned it on or whether they've turned it off. We can pursue it, but again, in the past, and I believe, Fred, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but usually we don't get much detail from them, even if we pursue it.
I wouldn't characterize it as no information. I do think they are low information.
I didn't
But-
say no information. That's not what I said.
No, yeah, so the last response from Aqua said, on February 18th, 2021, charges were adjusted and removed from the bill totaling $3,993.82. A corrected bill was issued on March 18th, 2021, showing these charges as an adjustment. And then when I asked what it was for, that's when they came back with the 188,000 gallons.
And then the second adjustment,
And then the second one, apparently there was something going on with the person's meter, but the person accepted a $500 credit from Aqua, which Aqua said equated to 47,000 gallons of water.
So I'm not aware if it's a meter issue. I mean, the meter is owned by Aqua, is that correct? So they're the owner of the meter that makes that decision. If we want more detail, we'll have to pursue it with them.
I understand where Felix is going. The question is, did they screw up on the dollars or they screw up on the gallons? But because of the way the bill is created, it's the gallons multiplied by a rate equals the
Sure.
dollars. So if the dollars are screwed up, the gallons have to be. So we don't know whether they screwed up the gallons or they screwed up a meter reading or whatever it is. But either way, we took their bill as being factual and just copied over their gallonage. So however they screwed up, it's going to reflect the higher gallons, no matter what
Sure.
the cause was. I understand where he's going with, because if they just had a typo on the dollars, well, then that's an adjustment for dollars, but the volume was correct. And we don't want to give them a credit if their volume was correct. But
Correct.
just knowing how their bills are related, it's like a spreadsheet. A times B equals C. So I think
So
either
Fred,
way we'd have bad information.
Fred, it looked like on the one they did have usage issues, but so how do we secure for that?
Well, I don't know that we do, and I think the only checks and balances would be for have Shannon to go back and look at the previous bill and see what was their usage of the last 2 or 3 quarters, and is there adjusted one and consistent with that? That would be a back of the napkin checks and balances that we could do. But there's really nothing we can do. I mean, we're totally reliant on their system.
Felix, do you want to do that check and balance before we proceed with this?
so we have to do our own internal review, and I don't see it from Aqua that it's cut and dry just yet. I mean, I didn't see it through the email chain that we had anybody from Aqua really I don't know, I'm just trying to read through it, but I didn't see Aqua saying, yeah, this is the reason, this is what happened, and this is why it was adjusted. So I'm just looking for more detail. So if they can't provide it, you know, we can request it. And then we
Yeah,
can do our
Shannon, do you
own.
think you'd be able to contact Aqua and see if we'd be able to get any more detail on this?
I can try.
Yeah, yes, please. And
Okay.
Terry, is there a timeline for these? Like, can this wait until the next board meeting, or is this something
Yeah.
that happens? Okay, good.
No,
Thank
you're
you.
good.
We'll do that.
Can we discuss the escrow summary account? And it looks like the item 203 East 12th
So
still hasn't been resolved.
we got a check in for 203 East 12th for $7,585.84 just the other day. It was, Ed, do you remember what day that
Yeah.
was?
I believe it was Thursday.
We did not get their tapping fees yet, but we did get the escrow replenishment.
If I can, Ed, do you want to jump in here? Because Eddie and I were talking about this a few weeks ago after the board brought this up at your last meeting. And Ed reached out to the Radkowski, is it? Am I pronouncing that correctly? Said, why don't you explain to the board what we decided to do and how you handled it?
You're
And we
muted.
can't hear you.
Ed, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. So we reached out to Mr. Batowski, and we were able to get him to agree to send in the escrow balance of the $7,500 and some odd dollars. And on Thursday, he actually agreed to pay the tapping fees. So he should be sending a check in for that, he said.
So he didn't pay tapping fees and he didn't put money into escrow for professional services.
Well,
Correct?
he did. He just used all the money for the escrow.
So he initially funded the escrow account correctly,
Yes.
and then what transpired to run into the $4,000 deficit in the escrow account?
Well, I believe what happened was as he approached the threshold, he was around where he should replenish. It was like 2,000. A bunch of bills came in from the solicitor and the engineer, I believe, and they just all came in at the same time, and that put him under.
By that significant amount?
Yes.
That was,
It wasn't a normal project because it's not like just one connection, one house. Because of the main extension, there was a lot more engineering work there done to that. It was a much more complex project than a regular one. So.
is it a timing issue on the billing cycle, or?
I think so, yes, because all the bills come in at once a month. All the invoices, so for professionals, and that's when we go through them.
But then it would have been zeroed out before the bills came in, because the previous month came in and basically, because if you're only going on a monthly cycle, then you knew at the end of the month, the first month, that you were depleted, but yet work continued, and then a second bill came in.
No, the work did not continue. We asked the professionals to stop until it was replenished, and we were asking for it to be replenished, and it wasn't. So once it got down below 2,000, we stopped work on the project.
So it was never funded correctly.
It was original.
Well,
It was never.
as per our requirements, but that's the new requirements.
I'm not sure if it wasn't. I'm thinking in the beginning it was, but I think just it wasn't refunded properly. If that makes sense.
So the escrow balance went down to somewhere around the 2,000 range, and then we got one large bill for $4,400 at one time. And that's when the balance went below. And then most of the other bills were the Rudolph Clark bills going back and forth trying to get the escrow replenished.
What are we gonna do differently to prevent that to happen again?
So I guess we could, I mean, do we, so that, where is the line that we draw and say, okay, now we need more escrow, $2,000, 3,000? It's like
Well, this may be something that the board needs to determine. We've discussed this issue several times. And so it was a timing issue. We've discussed this. This does not happen with every developer as well. Most developers are happy to pay their tapping fees as a part of maintaining the infrastructure and being a part of the community. Those that we have issues with, can't say. So we can come up with, once it reaches a certain point, we call. We've never had that in the past. We can do this. Again, I would like to say this is pretty explicit with this developer that we've had this issue. We don't have it very often.
But we have open projects meeting once a month, and we go over these items, and I think the board's aware of that, certainly.
I try to attend those.
Yeah,
as
my
often as
experience
possible.
in the short time I've been here is that you have very few projects that, let's say, are in the red, and with this exception, all the other ones are like $100 or $200. Shannon, offhand, I don't have the report in front of me, but how many of our project developers are, as it relates to the professional service escrow, are in the, let's say, in the red?
Well,
So
it happened because of a lot of work with the board, Terry. It wasn't always that way. For a while there, it took us some time to get the escrow accounts under control. So we did a lot of due diligence on monitoring escrow accounts and making sure we had processes in place that we didn't run into this kind of situation. So when something like this comes up, it is an oddball, but it also means that several of the processes that we developed weren't followed. And that's what I'm trying to understand, is like, what changed to cause this one to go significantly in the red as opposed to all the other ones when we already had established processes? So that was my question.
I believe it was a lack of response.
And then my
on the
second question
developer's
was,
part. So you can
my
check
second
with
question-
Shannon about that.
my second question was a request for a interim update, so this conversation wouldn't happen at the board level, but we didn't receive one. And I'm just curious, Lauren, do you recall this conversation on a interim update?
I missed that, Felix. So if that was something that
Nah,
I
it
was
was a pretty significant, it was a pretty spelled out request. So I'm asking Lauren if she recalls it.
Felix, to be honest with you, I don't recall specifically. I do know that there were some scheduling issues in getting the open projects meeting this month. So Terry and I we did discuss that earlier today, and I was also out last week. So there was just a couple of issues this month in getting that open projects meeting to occur. But Terry and Ed were working on that particular matter, notwithstanding that.
Yeah, we didn't have that meeting. It was canceled. I couldn't attend this time either. I had to go to a wedding.
Right.
Yeah, but just so Felix understands and everybody here tonight, we prioritized this particular project to get something done. And Ed's explained that. Ed and I discussed that at the conclusion of our last meeting. And Ed offered to reach out directly to the developer and sweet talk him into getting us our money back, which evidently he's been very successful at doing. So I want to thank Ed for stepping up and getting us this far. And it sounds to me like we're going to get the rest of our money very shortly. And and when we do, I'll send a board out a special notice to that effect.
Thank you, Terry. That's a great idea to do that.
Yeah.
especially since it's of concern. So that would be good to alert folks.
So this goes into, I had put a request out for information on this, for intermediate board update. I put a request out for information on the cost of on a previous project, which we just received right before the meeting. So I'm glad that you didn't forget that one. And then also the virus vaccination update. So I guess 2 out of 3 isn't bad.
We
But,
received
certainly not
emails on the
acceptable.
back. We received emails.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone forgot the last issue, Felix. I think they just explained that the
No,
meeting, we didn't have the open projects meeting in between the last meeting and today.
Well, then it did get forgotten. It did get forgotten, Mike, because the request was for an update. If the update is the meeting didn't happen, then it didn't happen. So, I mean,
And I
that's
think
the
the two
request
people,
I made.
two of the people who were present at the meeting, Terry and Lauren, don't recall the update. So
I guess we have to go back and look at, and it was captured in the minutes partially. I guess we'd have to go back and watch the tape now, wouldn't we? But I guess that's the frustration I'm expressing is requests made and no follow through, Mike. I mean, you can talk about the previous request on the 9th Street project on the easements and getting that 3 months later. So, you know, that's what I'm asking for, Mike, is prompt services.
Oh. Okay.
Well, we have gotten vaccine updates, and I've been in touch with Terry as well. So I know Lauren sent out the latest update about that. And it is on the agenda for Terry this evening. So that has not yet been spoken to the board. You are speaking to that tonight, correct, Terry?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I approve bills being paid? Are we there? Are we ready to do that? Am I on? Lucky lady.
Yes, go
Can
for
you
it.
hear me? I don't have a mic to tap. Sorry. Okay, can I, there are bills to be paid in the amount of $117,000, $117,585,000.93. I'm not used to seeing that, so sorry about that. I get a little confused. I don't see that amount. So do I hear a motion for the bills to be paid in that amount?
I'll make that motion.
See that under Rudolph Clark, the monthly retainer has not been billed.
We did not receive the Rudolph Clark invoices before the
Guess
bill
we're
was.
don't have to pay it then. All right.
do we have a retainer here? I thought everything was just hourly.
I don't think you do.
No, I can't recall in the 12 years I've been here, they were billing a retainer.
My mistake.
Yeah, I don't remember that in 11 years. So I believe it's all hourly. Okay. All right. So do we hear a motion to pay for that? In the second?
I mean, Carol.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, and a motion to accept the finance. We need a roll call. We're paying bills, Shannon. And you're muted.
Did we get a second?
Yes, it was. I'll second.
You'll second? Okay. All right. Jane Flanagan,
Yes.
Felix Raimondo,
Yes.
Carol Smith.
Yes. Okay, and are there any other questions on the finance report? If not, do I hear a motion to accept the finance report? Everybody's muted.
I'll make that motion, Carol.
And I'll second. Thank you. Roll
Jane
call,
Flanagan.
please.
Yep, Jane
One final
Flanagan.
question.
Good.
The Times Herald, this is not so much the bills be paid, but I guess is it money well spent to still advertise in the Times Herald are we legally responsible to put in the Times Herald? Or do we have other avenues to advertise?
You have to advertise in a newspaper of general circulation. We've always used the Times Herald, but there is no requirement we use that specific newspaper. It just has to be of general circulation in the Conshohocken area.
I believe the borough uses the Times Herald as well. Is that true, Jane?
Yes, it is. I was going to say that unfortunately we have no options. That's the only newspaper. The Enquirer would be outrageously expensive.
Enquirer is very much more expensive.
Right.
And probably not hit the population area that we would really
Right.
want anyway for
Right.
what we, yeah, okay.
All right, thank you.
All right, Jane Flanagan.
Yes.
Felix Raimondo.
Yes.
Carol Smith.
Yes. Okay, on to the solicitor's report.
Our report is attached in the board book. We've been working with Terry and the staff on a wide variety of issues, some of which we've already discussed tonight. One of the things that we've been working on is one of the action items, which is listed this evening, is trying to work with SEPTA on the project to get a right of entry for access for this project. We do have it listed as an action item this evening for the motion to authorize application to SEPTA for the right of entry agreement for connection with the liner project and pay $1,000 processing fee. But in conversations with Terry and with Fred, the determination has been made that it probably makes more sense to shift this over to the contractor as opposed to us paying it. There is a lot of information regarding dates that we're going to need the right of entry and exactly what will be done and who will be the contact person. And it just makes, and this was coming from Terry and Fred, it just made much more sense to shift this over to the contractor instead of us doing it. Because of some of the back and forth with SEPTA, it looks like we're going to need to be getting these right of entry agreements every time we need to access our pipe. The good news is you can do it online, and it looks like it's a fairly quick process. The bad news is every time you do it, it's going to cost you $1,000. So this is one of those things, like when you're dealing with SEPTA and PennDOT, you can argue with them all you want, and then they're just going to say, no, do it our way, or there's no other way to do it. So other than that, the only other action item we have is regarding the CDs, and I'll let Lauren and or Terry speak to that.
Certainly. So at the last meeting, we had discussed investing certain of the authority's funds in some CD accounts with this bank. One of the requirements for these agreements does require us to approve the execution of the agreements for deposit of authority funds into the following CD accounts with Tompkins Vis Bank. And the 6 different accounts are listed in the report this evening. There's also a form of resolution that is part of the agreements, which we can complete once the board approves the purchase of these CDs and the execution of the agreements.
And one final thing before we get to that is the last week or so has seen a significant amount of activity in Harrisburg regarding how we conduct our business. And whenever there's a significant amount of activity in Harrisburg, that means there's a significant amount of confusion coming out of Harrisburg. So there has been a significant amount of confusion regarding how public meetings need to be conducted. At one point last week on Wednesday or Thursday, we were of the opinion that we could continue to conduct our meetings virtually through September 30th. And then there was some guidance that if you don't have a physical location, that you are possibly violating the Sunshine Act if members of the public do not have a physical location. So the guidance we have been providing to our clients is that while you can continue to meet remotely and board members can continue to participate remotely, and since you're an authority, you don't even have to have a quorum in the room. You can have a quorum meeting remotely. You do have to have the meeting shifted back to a physical location where the public can attend, observe, and participate. So beginning in our July meeting, we are going to need to start advertising that the meetings will be held at the authority offices. If there is the possibility for doing it in a hybrid model, you can, but you are not required to. If you don't do it in a hybrid model, it needs to be clear that members of the public will only be able to participate if they attend at the authority building. Lauren and I had a meeting last night, one of our townships in Bucks County. They have the capability of a hybrid model. So members of the public were online. Lauren was doing it remotely. I was actually in the meeting room. But if we don't have that capability, then we just have to make sure that the public knows there will be no more remote option for the public come our July meeting.
I have a question. Do we
Sure.
know if we have that capability? And actually moving forward, I think it would be great to have the hybrid model both for us and for the borough, because anything that allows more access and transparency is best. Do we know if we can do this? I mean, at least until the virus, because quite frankly, I'm a little concerned with the Delta variant, that these regulations may change in the fall. I'm vaccinated, but there are still a lot of people who aren't. So these restrictions that are being lifted, I'm just saying this with caution, depending what happens in the fall, they may come back as well. But my question here is, can we do the hybrid model at our facility?
Now, does that require someone like Ed to be at the building? At the
Well,
authority building and establish the, let's say, the virtual link?
I believe that
Carol,
would be, I'm sorry.
Carol, my best guess is that we probably don't possess the technology necessary to do the hybrid model.
Okay.
Because I think what you're going to have with the hybrid model is, let's say next month, Ed, I'll pick, well, Felix is there tonight. So let's say next month, Ed, Felix, Fred, and I are in the room, right?
Mhm.
And if you and other board members are participating remotely, then we're going to have one camera set up. I don't know how we have it so other members of the public can be doing it live while they're in person. It's like I said, the township that we had last night has a whole IT department, has a whole meeting room that has cameras everywhere.
Yeah,
it just might be difficult, but we can look into it.
Just a bit of history. When we didn't have this before, people could call in and be at the meeting on speakerphone. So there's still that capability.
They still can do that. There's nothing
that prevents
you allowing that to happen.
That's my point. If it needs to be, understood. Okay.
But video broadcasting, it might be difficult.
It would be echoey and probably inconsistent.
Right.
People being able to understand.
It's probably something we'd want to do a couple of dry runs on. Yep.
Sure. Well, thank you for that clarity. So.
And that, other than the action item on the CD, that concludes our report.
Mike, do we want to, what do you need from us to go forward on the CDs?
It's a motion to approve the execution of agreements for deposits of authority funds into the following CD accounts with Tompkins Bank. And they can be listed as they are presented on the agenda.
And
They
I
have
believe you
the
all,
account numbers and the deposit amounts.
and I believe that was all discussed thoroughly at the last meeting. So do I hear a motion for that?
I'll make that motion.
Do I hear a second? I'll second. This is for the CDs
Okay,
at the highest rate that's available at this time. No, do you have a question?
no,
Shannon, you're muted.
Flanagan. Yeah,
Oh.
Jane Flanagan.
Yeah.
Felix Raimondo.
yes.
Carol Smith.
Yes.
Did we have a motion on the SEPTA one?
No, because we're not doing that.
Okay, so we're just, okay.
Yeah, that we're not taking action on that item. We're gonna that's gonna become part of the bid specs.
I did have a question on that. Had we known why didn't we notice prior? Because that way we held up the bid, correct? Did we hold up the bids because we didn't have access to the property?
No,
No, yeah, yes, we did. Yeah.
So we held up the bid because we didn't have this information prior. And I'm curious on what changed in the last month and like why didn't notice prior to this month, and we could have put the bid out earlier.
The first time we got someone from SEPTA to tell us what was going to be required.
Okay, so then we can move forward on the lining project.
Yes, and Fred will make this right of entry agreement as part of the bid specs.
Yeah, and it actually will have to be part of the bid specs. I'll explain that in my report. And I think the goal initially was to get a permanent right of entry and a license agreement, so we would basically have a permanent easement. It came to light then that we couldn't get our permanent easement even if we paid an annual fee. And the desire there was for just routine maintenance. Anytime we have to maintain it, that we'd have an easement like we would anywhere else. It came to light then through the process that apparently that doesn't exist and we have to get it on an individual per action item.
Thanks for explaining that, Fred. Appreciate that.
Okay. Are we at the point of accepting the solicitor's report? Is that where we're at, Shannon? Do I hear a motion to accept the solicitor's report?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Jane Flanagan.
Yes.
Felix Raimondo.
Yes.
Carol Smith.
Yes. Okay, Fred.
Okay. First item is the liner phase 2 and 3. We now put the bid documents out. They probably will not go out till next week. We need to update the bid documents for this right of entry. And I do agree that it should be part of this, an extensive discussion that and the reason for this is they have to be specifically trained. Surveyors had to go to this one. So That's something that I think we've done. With that being said, I think Vinny should get the training and maybe one of our other operators, because if they're and be pre-trained and pre-qualified, because while, as Mike said, it's a very simple online form and submission of the money, they have to have our certificate of insurance on file, and there has to be a person that was officially trained. I knew that our surveyors actually had to go out and go through training with them, and it was a more time-consuming procedure there just because of COVID, and they couldn't physically meet out there. But I think it would be good to have our collection system staff trained. That way they can go in anytime. And there's obviously going to be times when we're going to have to get, we'll send them an email. But if I have a clog underneath the track, we're flushing that line that night. Can't do construction, can't dig it up. But if there's a clog, we're going to have to come up with a procedure that we can do what's necessary. The chances of that happening are relatively low, but you never know. And we are making major connections right on the other side of the track for a significant number of units that were never there before. So, we have Matson Mill, 51 Washington, and whatever else gets connected there. So before, the flow from our intercept kind of went down Caldwell Lane, went all the way down underneath the tracks, nice clean motion, and nothing that disrupted its flow. There's now, additional flows going in there. So there's a higher risk. I'm not saying it's a great risk, but a higher risk in there. So that's something that we'll be talking about at the next staff meeting, is just getting our guys trained. And then just having a written SOP for if this happens, that we know exactly what we have to do to obtain this right of entry, permit in there. But with that said, I just took you down a sidebar on it, but we can now get both contracts out. That will, as we discussed last month, will need to be bid independently in accordance with the respective grant contracts, but I'm going to put them out at the same time. So that way, hopefully people bid on a larger volume, which reduces our prices. And we've received great prices in the last month and a half on these projects, enough that a number of other municipalities are taking advantage of it and also rushing liner contracts out, which is good and bad, quite honestly. You have more competition. But I kind of told all my other clients, jump in the fray right now. Water's warm. So with that, you already authorized the project to be bid last month. So I think we're good to go now that we got this clear direction on it. Next item is operation at the treatment plant. Treatment plant is operating significantly better as a result of reducing the amount of polymer that's used in the sludge processing. As a result, the sludge, the biology is not fluffing off of the RBCs. And the digester is able to have a lot more clear supernatant. I'll be out again next week to monitor that. I actually had John Vito of my office out handling that and monitoring and taking pictures and reporting back to me as well. Next item, and I'm going to defer to Ed a little bit on this one, is because Ed actually had the direct conversations on Freely Square that he had met with representatives of Aqua, and apparently Aqua, Pennsylvania, is willing to pave the private parking lot of Freely Square as part of their project. So I'll leave Ed coordinating that. The only thing that I need to have done is that we need to have the work completed a minimum of 30 days in advance of their proposed paving so that any trench settlement can occur. But Ed, can you fill them in on your conversations with Aqua and how we're going to know when to bid or to authorize the work? On mute.
Sorry. Yes, I met with Ray Sokolowski and this gentleman from Aqua, and I gave him maps of where we're going to be working, what we're going to be doing, and they're actually going to be doing a big project over on West Fifth Avenue as well next year. So I explained to them where the work's going to take place, and I believe that the borough's actually got a couple things going on over there too in the street. So they agreed. They said if we can get our project in just shortly before theirs is done, that they will do the overlay, which will save us costs on our project, not having to pay our contractor to actually go in and dig up the temporary patch and put a permanent one in.
So we'll just be coordinating that so that we're done, 45 days in advance of when their proposed paving is, just so we get any trench settlement in there. But that will be a savings to us, and we'll just have to reflect it in scope of work. Next item is the media replacement project. It's currently underway right now. You guys can see that out there. They've removed approximately half of the existing media. And the work will probably continue early next week, weather permitting. I don't believe they really work too much today with the weather, but they'll be removed. They've removed one of the two sides. They need to move the other side out and taking that away. Gone relatively smoothly so far. And then we'll get that in. So we definitely need to make sure that we do this a little bit earlier next time. The media wetted out. So the carbon filters, if you had it in there, it was very flaky when it's early put in. And air flows very well through it. When it wets out, it basically turns into paper mache. And as a result, air can't flow through it. And there are little carbon molecules that are out there, not molecules, particles there that are, think of them like little stars with a lot of surface area because they're broken up. And then that's what traps the gases and retains those gases in there. Once all the voids get filled up by the gases in there, they start to what we call wet out. And then they just push together and form like a paste. And once that's there, the effectiveness of the media. So we pushed it a little too long this time, but didn't really receive only one odor complaint. But next time we want to be a little bit earlier, and we were honestly delayed with COVID, so we have that now tracking in the budget.
Yeah, Fred, I have a question, and
Yes.
thank you. I mean, yeah, we did say that we were a little late on this before because of the COVID issues. So I just have a question. How long is I don't remember, how long does the media usually last?
5 years.
5 years. Okay. So, okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's got a range of 3 to 7. We know that I think we're on we're at the little bit far end of it, and we want to do it probably year 4 next time.
And since we've also had the mechanical improvements in the HVAC system, the media probably gets a good extension that way as well. And I don't know, will the screw press change anything in terms of odor control? You're going to talk about that, I know, but I was just curious.
Yeah.
Probably not. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Tough to say, to be honest with you. It's the same process. I would say, honestly, the screw press would be significantly less, but there is, however, a change order. It's a no-cost change order. It's a time extension of 60 days. And the reason for this is that they actually tried to come out and complete their contract on time, but their schedule was the same time that we were doing a pilot test. And we wouldn't want to have 2 contractors on the site with 2 tractor trailers. So we asked them to push back. They agreed. But as a result, they're supposed to be, substantially complete June or final complete June 18th. We pushed them back. So I'm recommending that the board consider a 60-day cost extension at no cost to the authority.
Motion on that, Fred, for that?
Yes, I do need a motion.
Okay. And is this our 4th vendor that's coming in?
Well, it will be our 3rd vendor on this sludge, but this is a time extension for the Calgon, the odor control media replacement.
Oh, the odor control media. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Shannon, I believe we need a roll call.
Yep. Jane Flanagan,
Yes.
Felix Raimondo,
Yes.
Carol Smith.
Yes.
Fred, is there any way to test the media, the carbon media, to see the health of it prior to opening it up?
It's a visual inspection that you perform, and you can actually, well, a couple ways. Number one, we can test the gases coming out of it at different levels in the media. There's actually ports that we can go and send those samples out to a lab. What we didn't do the first time was take historic ones that we should do every 6 months to see as the breakout continues, because you need to have a base thing to see it, become less effective, which I think I'm recommending that we do this time. I also am recommending that once a year we do a visual inspection of it, because I know much more by the visual inspection. Quite honestly, you'll see it. They're in bags and they're nice and fluffy. And like when you first see it, it's you can just push it. Once you see it start to wet out, it falls to the bottom and coagulates into. Looks like paper mache almost until it dries out. So I think we recommend we do both of those.
This is just like charcoal, right? We're not using the permanganate, right?
It is charcoal. They take coconut shells, burn them, and that's what creates this. It's in an engineered environment, but it's coconut shell carbon. It's burned coconut shells that have been purified.
No,
Why coconut?
I think it's a good idea. It's something that we didn't do before. Maybe, to start an Excel spreadsheet with just as you said, from the initial, after they're done keeping samples of each of the different times, that seems like an excellent data resource for us. But I'm curious if we could also tie that in. I don't believe we put the meters out anymore for, do we still put those out, Ed?
I'm sorry.
Do we still put out the hydrogen sulfide meters anymore?
We haven't recently, no.
We haven't had a reason to. So if we had some of that data, we could tie it in, but I don't think we need to since we've had the odor control project. We haven't been putting out those, Jane, but previously, before the odor control project, we had gotten hydrogen sulfide meters for 2 different levels of concentrations and placed them around the plant to get an idea of what we were getting there and correlate that. That's when Stephen was still here, correlate that with the odor complaints. And that actually provided a lot of data for Webster, was the company that came in and did the odor control. And they actually analyzed the particulates of the fine chemical particulates that ended up deciding that we used only charcoal and we didn't need charcoal and potassium permanganate. So just to give you a little background on that, but it's good news that we're capturing this data now. I like to, it's just, that's a good thing to do. It'll be good information.
Definitely would. And I just have to say, in the past 5 years, it's been tremendously improved. So
I believe we've only had 1 complaint this year. Is that right, Ed?
Correct.
And probably the same day I thought, it's smelling a little funky, but by the afternoon it was gone. So I think you're doing a fabulous job, all of you. It's just been a pleasure.
One thing that I've been tossing around the back of my brain, and I'm trying to, I think the system should be recalibrated again by Webster. It's based on airflow, making sure you're pulling the same amount, and there's dampeners. Well, they've been sitting there for 5 years, and any mechanical dampener doesn't open to the same spot every time. I'm debating whether I want to wait to do that until the sludge pilot, or until we install the new screw press. But quite honestly, I think with the new media, it would be a good time to get it adjusted and have Webster come up and just do a once over. I don't think it'd be very expensive. I'm sure it'll be $1,000, but just to have them come up and recalibrate it and just make sure that they're not seeing anything that I'm not seeing, because I can't tell you airflow, like they have the technology to make sure that it's airflow, that it's properly balanced, and just any adjustments. I just know with any air handling unit, 5 years is a long time for it to remain in balance. So I think that might be money well spent.
That's something that, Shannon, that's something we may need to include on the budget. It sounds like what would you recommend, Fred, every 5 years for that tie that cost into our projected media budget?
Yeah, and I would do it with that, and I would just capitalize it almost as part of the overall project, in there, and just have them in. I'll reach out to Webster and just get an estimated cost for them and also their recommendation. I'm just doing this on other authorities where we're have odor control systems, and we are just realizing it's important to rebalance it again.
Well, it makes sense to maintain a $2 million+ system than it is to repair it. And, you know, that's a gap that we recognize now. So I appreciate that. But Shannon, you're going to have to, you know, put that into the budget, the cycle budget with the media replacement. You could tie it into that, as Fred said.
Last thing on the media replacement, we did request and receive permission to work extended hours from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And one of my employees told me that it made the more than the curve, you know, public notification that somehow they found out that we requested that. But even though we are not necessarily working those hours, I've learned that it's better to ask the borough permission because you never know if they get halfway through something and it takes them a couple more hours.
I just want to say, no, I was delighted to see that the borough posted that on Facebook, that
Okay.
there was that sewer work going on, because the borough, you know, gets a lot of flack when PICO does stuff and they're not aware of it, and when other contractors do stuff. So they did alert the public to this. So I was quite happy to see that.
So, yeah, you can thank Jonathan Vito in my office on that one. He knew right away to get that one in.
Thank John for me, Fred.
I will. Next item is the sludge pilot test and the condition of the sludge building. The third pilot test is scheduled for next week, and based on that, you know, that will probably be all of the technology that we're going to do. I know Ed is in discussion with Ambler, I believe. They're using a rotary press. Do you have any update on that at all, Ed, that you want to give the board?
I did not hear back from the gentleman I know up there.
Okay, so I've seen them used, or they've never been selected in any other ones from other engineers that have run them. So everyone seems to be going on the centrifugal screw press. But what happened last week kind of brought to light one of our concerns in our evaluations. Is a ventilation fan in the side of the building fell out because the supports underneath it rotted out. We previously mentioned that we were going to have to do structural repairs to the side of the building based on the observations that we had when we did the odor control. When we did the odor control and cut into the ducts, we could see deterioration, and I wouldn't call it significant, but enough deterioration to cause concern. Now it is rotting out significantly more. Why? I think it's probably because a product of our own success with the odor control is that we're containing all of those gases in there rather than having them go out through ventilation fans. So they're in there, and contact time is for a significantly longer time until they can get brought in and brought through there. And as a result, and also by not having the doors open, it's just a wetter environment. There's more moisture and condensation. And hydrosulfuric gas or hydrogen sulfide makes hydrosulfuric acid, which rots it out. This is beyond my level of expertise, is to go in there without taking it every piece off and to do that. So what I've recommended to the authority is that they retain a third-party building inspector who specializes in structural steel and structural steel deterioration. And I believe Ed was going to coordinate with the borough and get a recommendation from the borough on who they would recommend to do this, that they know that's local and they respect. Were you able to get any feedback yet, Ed?
Yes, actually, the commercial building inspector for the borough came out and he walked around with me, and, you know, I showed him where the vent was located. And he said there was a good section of that wall, maybe 10, 12 feet across all the way up, where he recommended just, having somebody come in, remove all the sheathing, reframe it, put it back together. He said it's all non-structural. He said really it's just basically weatherproofing. So that was his take on it.
Yeah, and just so the board knows, it's built like a pole barn where there's structural steel supports up to a concrete roof, and it's just a facade that's put on the outside of it. And it's lasted approximately 20 years. But I do think it's going to deteriorate faster with the odor control. So one of the options that we may want to just price out, not necessarily recommend, because I think you have two options. You can either replace all the facade and rebuild the pole barn building, knowing that it has a life of 20 years or less, or depending on where we're at financially, we put a masonry, whether that be a block up or that be like precast panels, like I call them, build-ups, that they just literally lift up. That would be a more long-term solution. So now that we've gotten the results back, and Ed, I don't know if you asked him, but I believe that the majority of the facade would have to be repaired. If we're not doing it now, we're going to be doing it next couple of years.
Do you mean by the majority of the building or majority of
Yes.
that one wall?
The majority of the entire building.
We did walk around the entire building, and he said the other three walls were in rather good shape considerably. He said he didn't see
Okay.
any concern there. My
Because
concern is there's another vent on the other wall that I'd like to have looked at. Whoever the contractor, we're trying to get people to come in and give us quotes, and that's where we're at.
quotes for inspection or quotes to replace it?
Just for repairing the section that's where the vent fell out of.
Okay, as an interim fix, but that's something that I think it's up to the board if they want to pursue that. Go ahead, Carol.
So it's completely understandable. Things are contained and you have, acidic gases because, hydrogen sulfide does become an acidic gas that's causing this corrosion to metal. Do we need to have any sort of will those vents provide enough? Do you need to add it? I don't want to add costs, but is there, do we need a dehumidifier in there? Do we need a more powerful vent system? Or is it just appropriate that the way that it's run and this is the situation as it's going to be? It's just a question for you.
I think it's a situation as it's going to be, because the ventilation system is set up not only to comply with the legal requirements, but more or less specifically designed for the odor control. Now, could the flow rate have been less because the media was near the end of its life, which created more friction or more resistance as it went through? Absolutely, it could. But we noticed a deterioration when we were in there. You have to realize that a metal building and sludge is a replacement issue. That you got 20 years out of it. That's all you're going to get out of it. And I wouldn't piecemeal it. If you're going to go back with metal, go back with the entire shell being metal, or go to masonry, because I think otherwise you're going to have it just wearing out and a constant maintenance. And I would rather do that at one time when you're replacing the screw press. Doesn't mean you have to. You can do it as a separate project later on. But.
All right, we've been patching this building for a while. We've replaced motor starter, ventilation system, conduits. There's a bunch of stuff over the years we've replaced. I think we're done monkeying around with this, in my personal opinion. So, I mean, if you're going to do something in there, it's got to be, OCal, conduits, ventilation engineered correctly, and surfaces that we're not repairing every couple of years. So I'd rather see we do it right.
At least get the cost for it. Yeah. Because it's going to be a maintenance item. There's no question in my eye. It just, metal and gases just don't go well. So.
I agree. I think it would be a good idea to get a price on that for the masonry building.
Because I'm not sure that it's going to be as much as I think it's going to be, but I don't know. So let's get a price, and I'll bring that back to you. And we'll work with some of Ed and get some pricing from Ed's, contractors that he's working with for what a metal is. Because, and I looked at, do you do a high build epoxy, coating and all the metal and everything?
That's just what I was going to ask you, Fred. Did they do any sort of coating to protect it from acid gas?
The problem with it is, as soon as you screw through it, you destroy the coating.
Yeah, yep.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm sure whatever we put on now will be significantly better than was on there originally.
That's what I was thinking. They probably do have some sort of resistant coating on it.
But I talked to my structural engineer about it, and he looked at me and he goes, "Seriously?" And he just laughed at me. He's like, "It's hydrogen sulfide gas. You don't combine that with metal." So, but, so I will come back to the board with that. And like I said, just an option to consider, but, you know, it's definitely been something there that is a concern. Just some real quick updates on developer projects. Echo Ridge, it appears that the contractor has completed the majority of the punch list items. And did Vinny have a chance to go out and pull that manhole and make sure that all of them were completed?
I don't believe he did yet.
Okay, so, you know, Ed caught and picked up on that, so. Next item is Matson Mill Apartments. They're just completing the testing of their sewer system, and proceeding down through there. SEPTA bus station or the train station, we completed a review. Basically, we have an option of the lesser of two evils. I don't want to have a lateral for two main public bathrooms that I think are going to be very heavily used, but it's only going to be about 2.5 feet of cover on it. So the manhole is going to be very shallow, pain in the butt to access, but it's still significantly better than a clean out going 400 feet away. But there's nothing we can do. I mean, the topography is a topography, and I really don't want to have a grinder pump put out there if there is a issue with, you know, just a number of people, because I think that the chances of a grinder pump clogging is very high, just with the type of people. If you're going to drop stuff in when you're at a train station, nobody's fishing it out of the toilet. You're just flushing it on down. So hairbrushes, whatever else falls in, cell phones will all go in there and go through there. We have, next item is 331 West 7th Avenue. We should notice a substantial completion on June 2nd. This is just laterals, so we're not taking dedication of anything. All the punch list items have been done. So we're recommending the release of their maintenance bond because we're not taking dedication. All the work was completed and all punch list items were addressed. Do we need a motion on that to release that?
Yes.
Yeah, we do. I'll make that motion to release that.
Second.
Flanagan,
Yes.
Felix Raimondo,
Yes.
Carl Smith.
Yes.
Next item is almost exactly the same. 340 West or 340 9th Avenue. I think it's West 9th Avenue. Once again, substantial completion was completed on April 7th of 2021. We're not accepting dedication, strictly laterals. So, and all punch list items have been completed. So we are recommending release of the maintenance bond on that project.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Flanagan,
Yes.
Felix Raimondo,
Yes.
Carl Smith.
Yes.
Last item on my report is 400 West Elm. This is a 352 unit apartment complex. As proposed, we completed our first plan review on May 28th, 2021. I am anticipating them coming in to fight our flow per EDU for apartments. They asked me if I would support that, and I said absolutely not. That the board has established a policy, and the policy is the policy. They can submit whatever flow data they want, but you know, right now I have to comply with that. But I just want you to be aware that they are most likely going to be making that argument. And that completes my report, unless the board has any additional questions.
I'll make a motion.
Anyone
to
have
accept.
any? I'll second that.
Jane Flanagan,
Yes.
Felix Raimondo,
Yes.
Carl Smith.
Yes. Thank you, Fred. And thank John too, okay?
I will.
And how is he doing as a new father?
He's doing very well. He's a very good father. So
All right, well,
he's got
you know, we don't We don't get to see him, but tell him I'm glad he's doing well.
I will. He misses you guys. I told him I'm going to slide him back into the rotation again. But I like being here too much.
Well, good for him with being a new dad and all. So tell him we give him our best wishes.
Will do.
Okay, Ed, you're up. Is it Ed?
Okay, most of my list has been covered already, but I have some more stuff here. Next week we have the demo for the volute press coming in. Fred mentioned a little bit about that, so we're all prepared for that. I know last month I reported that Verizon came in and upgraded our phone line from copper to fiber. They just did that for us at the West Conshohocken pump station as well, so we're all tied up there. The backflow preventer inspections have been completed for both the plant and the West Conshohocken pump station. And I just want to report that our intern's doing really well. He's about to start phase 2, which will be out on the road with Vinny, learning the collection system. He spent the first 3 weeks in the plant learning operations, and he's doing a really good job.
I had a question on the intern and the pay rate. Is it $15 an hour?
Correct.
And we started this program 6 years ago at $15 an hour.
I don't know what it was back
It
then.
was $15 an hour. I guess that, but I knew that. I think that we should, I think we should give a pay raise to the intern and raise the rate. One, to keep up with, cost of living and such. I think we're getting a high quality candidates these days, and it should be reflected in the pay rate. We had a great candidate last time. This time we have another great candidate. And I think that we're due for a pay rate. So I was going to suggest a $2.50 pay raise. And I wanted to know what the board thought about that. I think that it reflects a challenging job for a summer position. I mean, this is hard work, physically demanding, mentally challenging. So, and hopefully pays forward, getting high quality candidates, and they go on to careers within this industry. So I'm going to make that as a motion, and I also want to hear what
I think that's
everybody
a great idea, Felix. I'm all for it.
I am too. I even wonder if it shouldn't be $20 an hour if some retailers are paying 15 now.
I'm
I'm
thinking
hiring degree engineers for $20 an hour with a 4-year degree.
Really?
That's what our starting our full timers at too, our utility guys.
Never mind. Never
Yeah,
mind.
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I mean, I'm hiring guys with 4-year degrees. I got a guy, guys with 3 to 5 years experience are only making 50s.
yeah, I don't even want to go into the nastiness of employment at this point, but this is an internship program which has proved valuable, and all of the past interns, we've gotten a lot out of them, and they provided a lot for us, while I think we've also provided a lot for them. But I agree with Felix. I believe to 1750, correct? I don't have a problem with that. For this and what we offer and what they get out of it, I think that's entirely appropriate.
Okay.
Okay, would that be effective immediately?
next pay cycle.
Okay.
I mean,
Do we need
does
for
anyone?
that?
I'm curious what anyone else thinks. I think it's appropriate. So, right, Jane,
No,
you thought so as well?
Yes. Yes. So I would, Alex, do you want to make that motion since she brought it up?
And we'll have to take a roll call. Yes.
Okay.
Felix, do you want to make that motion?
I made a motion. Looking for
I'll
a second.
Dean Flanagan,
Yes.
Felix Raimondo,
Yes.
Carol Smith.
Yes.
Anything else on your report?
Okay, that concludes my report.
questions, do I hear a motion to accept the plant manager's report?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Jane Flanagan,
Yes.
Felix Raimondo,
Yes.
Carl Smith.
Yes. Okay, and what is next? Is it operations? I'm trying to remember.
Elections.
Collections?
Collections and maintenance.
Okay. Are there any questions on the maintenance and collection report? If not, do I hear a motion to accept the maintenance and collection report?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
I did have a question, and this is more for Jane. I see that we had a significant amount of BA1 calls, and I know a lot of them have to do with tearing up the street and going for a gas line, moving the gas meter. Is the borough managing how the patching is being executed on the street repairs?
It's supposed to be coordinated through Public Works, and they are at the mercy of the utility companies.
Right, because the reason I'm asking this is I had it on my property, and every time I come home, there's another BA1 call marked up my yard, which is fine. But I had a relatively new street in terms of the paving, and they tore up the street, and I mean, the seal on the seams of the patch are already gone. It's been less than 6 months. I mean, they must be cutting that tar pretty good. That's not even the last 6 months.
So is that?
Hey, Ed, can you mute your microphone? I think we're getting a lot of echo.
Yeah, it's really echoey.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's hard to hear. Thanks.
So Felix, was that Pico that did the work or Aqua who did the work?
It's Pico Gas, but they have contractors that do all the installation.
Okay, so what I would ask you to do, you could call the borough phone number and lodge a citizen's concern. And then Rice Sokoloski will have to come out and inspect it. And if he thinks it's shoddy work, then he can report it as a borough employee.
And Felix, just to let you know, these Pico is using subcontractors. They came out to my house without any notice and dug up my native plant garden to install a new meter with very little care and very little concern. And I registered a complaint. This was earlier this year, but I called Pico and I registered a complaint with them because their subcontractors, quite frankly, they're probably just told go out and do this, and they do it. But I got no notice, and I got a lot of shit torn up that I was not happy with. Hundreds of dollars of plants. So I would call Pico and make a complaint about that. Just, my little sad story.
That's a shame.
Many have rebounded. Plants are hardy.
Good.
And I think the minute should reflect that Ms. Smith actually said stuff.
Stuff.
Okay.
All right, I'll
Not
do
how
a
I
roll
felt at the
call.
time.
Jane Flanagan,
Yes.
Felix Raimondo,
Yes.
Carol Smith.
Yes. And Terry?
Thank you, Carol. I think we're all aware that next week, I believe it's the 28th, the state will be lifting the masking mandate. That's all well and good. However, when it comes to our organization and establishing what I would characterize as safe a working environment as possible, as a COVID-free working environment as possible, I'm asking the board to consider the mitigation policy that I included in your packet. Um, I'll go through some of the fine points and I'd like to hear what the board has to say and what direction you want to go. The first change as it relates to our existing policy is that any employee who is fully vaccinated will not be required to wear a face mask. There's other considerations. Fully vaccinated employee who chooses to not wear a mask, however, must continue the practice of social distancing, must comply with any coworker's request to wear a mask while in their office or at their workstation. And in other words, be respectful of what your coworker wishes. Now, any employee who is not fully vaccinated must still wear a mask. And I judge that to be very important at this time. They have to wear a mask in the building. They have to wear a mask if they're in a vehicle with another employee. While they're outside, no, they don't have to wear a mask. I think we all, I would, in a perfect world, I would like to see all of our employees vaccinated. I think that equals goodness for everybody. At the moment, it's my belief that of our 10 employees, we have 7, well, let's say this, 6 for certain are fully vaccinated, and 1 employee is, let's say, halfway there at this point. So if you look at the numbers, 70% of the workforce, that's a start. However, at the same time, I want to point out that when you look at just our operation and maintenance personnel, essentially the non-office personnel, only 50% of those employees are vaccinated. I think that being the case, since we're not at 100%, that being the case, in addition to the requirement to continue to wear a mask if you're not vaccinated, I think it's important that we continue the staggered breaks and the staggered lunches that we implemented back in January, again, to maximize social distancing and minimize opportunities for infection. So I'm recommending and asking that our board approve the policy that I have before you. Now, do you have any questions, additions, subtractions?
So I had a question in regards to if someone exhibits signs of COVID, do they have to, before returning to work, do they have to get a test, a negative test?
Yes.
That's in our policy, but it's not here, or where does that live?
I thought it was in our policy. I'll have to go back to I haven't checked on that lately, but that was my recollection, Felix, but I'll double check that for you.
All right, and then are we going to implement a new employee requirement that they be fully vaccinated?
That's up to the board.
Mike, can you speak to that? I believe we've discussed this previously and how I mean, I'm not sure if we can do that with the union, so.
So I think it goes to something that we've said a lot over the last, 6 or 8 or 12 or 15 months.
Yep.
We're always kind of looking at the current guidance and what we're being told, bearing in mind that things can change a little bit as time goes on. I think one of the things you'll talk about, when we're talking about like the vaccination incentives or whatever, and the mandating of vaccinations and what we can do. The guidance has changed on that even over the last, couple of months of what you can do. And since there is a general thought right now that if you're going to mandate that someone get vaccinated, or not mandate, excuse me, incentivize someone for getting vaccinated, you have to create an equal kind of incentive for employees who won't get nominated for religious reasons or for health reasons. So based on that, the same kind of guidance would apply, that if you say, I'm not going to hire you unless you're vaccinated, but then somebody says, I'm qualified and I'm not getting vaccinated for religious reasons, or I'm not getting vaccinated for health reasons, then you run the risk of being accused of discriminating against that person based on their health situation or disability or on their religious beliefs. And that's very dangerous to do that. So we would recommend against that at this point in time. If the guidance changes, we'll be happy to provide you with that guidance. So
My understanding is that you can put it as a employment requirement for new hires. I also saw at a Houston, the judge threw one lawsuit out saying it had no merit. So I see it happening. I think Delta Airlines is doing it. There's several employers out there that are any new hires have to be fully vaccinated. So not quite sure the guidance you're giving.
Well, I'm telling you that it changes, and we're concerned that we want to be cautious and want to see how some of these things unfold, so we don't run the risk of getting ourselves getting sued. Now, look, we're a municipal entity. We have tort immunity, so we would probably be protected from a lot of these things. But again, based on where we see the guidance right now, one of the expressions we often use at the firm is we're not concerned about being on the leading edge. We just don't want to be on the bleeding edge. And we don't want to be out too far out in front on some of these things.
Mike, what are other
Yeah.
authorities doing?
None of our other clients are at this moment are predicating employment on being vaccinated.
Okay, thank you.
And I will say this too, if I just can. With some of our larger clients, they sometimes have separate labor council. The bigger townships will have a separate labor council. So this is kind of what we're getting from other people, and it's like a lot of things that are going on right now. Not everyone agrees, but we're just trying to take a more cautious approach. So.
Okay, thank you. Terry, you want to continue?
Jane, what do you think?
Actually thinking I should check with Stephanie and see how they're handling it, because the borough has 2 separate unions, maybe 3 with the police department. So that might be a good reference point for us.
It would be a good reference point. Thank you. Terry, I'd like you to continue, because we talked about this earlier today, and you got my suggestion that you could include in your discussion.
Well, at the moment, it's the mitigation policy that I think we're trying to focus on. Carol, is that okay?
No, that's fine.
The mask, no mask, if the board's okay with that or not okay, I just want to get some sense.
I just want to say I'm in total concurrence with what you propose, and I'd like to remind the board that our sewer employees not only are working amongst other people, they are working with raw sewage, which does contain viral particles. So they're not only first line responders in that way, they can be duly susceptible to the virus from sewage and from human contact. So I fully support what Terry has proposed. And again, I'm just, especially since this Delta variant, we'll see what happens in the fall. I'm hopeful the vaccination rates continue to go up, but that's something we should be cautious about. And I applaud Terry for proposing this. I think it's very well thought out and makes a great deal of safety sense. So thank you. Does the board, do we need a motion from the board to enact this, Terry?
Yes, please, if it's pleasure of the board.
Do the other board members concur with this, or do they have any remarks against it?
No, I think under the circumstances, it's a good stand to take, but acknowledging that things change rapidly and next month we might have to revisit this.
That's
So,
correct.
right. So for today, I would say yes, that's a good policy to start with. So I make that motion.
And I'll second.
Yeah, I was thinking that we should get guidance from the borough, see what they're implementing on their policy.
Well, I'd like to also just say that, again, being sewer workers, double risk exposure. I don't know if there's many borough employees that have that type of significant double risk exposure. Everything that Terry proposed is simple, easy to do, wearing a mask. So I concur.
Harold, in general, do our sewer employees have to have any type of like hepatitis vaccinations or?
That's
Do
a
they?
good question. Do they?
I don't know, but I
Because I
curious.
used to have when I worked in the lab, I had to have a hepatitis vaccine, Jane.
Right,
I forgot
right.
about that.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, as a teacher, we had to get physicals every single year. You didn't have to get your vaccines updated, but you had to have the physical every year. You had a TB test every 2 years. So that was part of your, professional responsibilities.
Yeah, I never even thought about that. That's a really good point.
You have Hep C.
Yeah,
There it is.
I
I
just
don't know
want to,
whether if it's required here. I mean, am I allowed to poll people? I mean,
Well, then it's not part of our employee handbook. See, as a teacher, it was. You had no, even before you could be hired, you had to have your physical and you had to have the TB test. So, that's a different type of profession. Their concern was more not getting the children sick, but in this situation, we're trying to protect the employees themselves. So I don't know. Maybe it's not a discussion for tonight. This might be a long-term thing to talk about.
No, that was a very interesting point. But as a teacher, you get exposed to,
Right.
everything.
Right. But I think riding a city bus, you probably get exposed to more than, you tend to have the same 20 kids all year. So it's not the same thing.
I just,
So you
You know,
don't know
if I-
if Hep C is required here? Do you recall if it's in our contract?
It's probably not.
Yeah, we don't think it is.
I don't remember it ever being required.
There's no
Right.
mandate in the collective bargaining agreement. There's just a reference to providing a program which we can provide for immunization for hepatitis B and tetanus, but there's no mandate.
That's right.
Yeah,
There's no man.
booster shots on tetanus. Well, I mean,
Right.
I think that every employee here should be offered the Hep C.
Mhm.
And there's two things every employee should do down here is get their Hep C shot and don't chew their nails. It's the plumbers do. Never mind.
Carol, just I just want to restate what I said earlier. Just please keep in mind that our group of employees that work most closely together all of the time. That group is only 50% vaccinated. And that's what concerns me.
No, I
Okay.
understand. We discussed this earlier today. That's why, as from our discussion, Terry, I completely support you. And, you know, just as a scientist, I completely support you and for the work that they do. So, and again, it's a minor inconvenience to wear a mask. I mean, if I was gowned for 8 hours sometimes, so I don't have much sympathy for people like complaining about a little face mask. They've ever been fully gowned in a, you know, in a hood room. So
Yeah, it also serves as a reminder that there's still a dangerous virus out there that could affect them.
no, that's a brilliant point.
And-
You know, even for myself, I have to make sure that I don't become lax about things because
And if they're
still
and
out
if they're and getting a vaccine is an incentive then to discard the mask going forward.
Terry, do you need a motion? Yes, so
Yes.
I would make,
So there was a motion.
oh, I'm sorry, Shannon.
That's okay. There was a motion and a second. We just have to do roll call.
Oh, okay,
Great.
All right. Jane
Thank you.
Flanagan. Yep.
yeah,
Felix Ramundo.
Yes.
Carol Smith.
Yes. Okay. So I believe, do I hear, are there any other, if there's nothing else, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Carol, I would just like to say thank you to everyone, that it's been my pleasure to work on the Sewer Authority Board with you. And I wish you well in the future. And I know that Tina Sokolowski will be a valuable member to this group. So thank you all. It's been a pleasure to know you all, and have a great rest of the evening.
Well, you'll still be
we-
involved with us because I think your sewer waste will be coming here from your new house.
We,
So you're
we
still
have-
going to be involved with us, Jane.
Right. As I said, we move him 4 blocks out of town, so it kind of stinks that I can't really stay on anything, but
Thanks.
I needed a first floor bedroom is a really jewel for me right now. So that's awesome.
It's a very smart move.
So we need a motion to accept the interim director's report. First.
I make that motion.
I'll second.
Thanks, Shannon. I'm sorry I missed that.
That's okay. Jane Flanagan.
Yes.
Felix Ramundo.
Yes.
Carol Smith.
Yes.
Okay. Now we're good. Now we can adjourn.
Well, Jane, thank you too. So
Thank-
we appreciate it and we're glad you're staying in the area.
Well, thank you. Do we need a
So-
motion?
Yes.
A motion to adjourn. Yes.
Yes.
I'll make that motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
Jane Flanagan.
Yes.
Felix Ramundo.
Yes.
Carol Smith.
Yes. Okay.
Best of luck, Jane, on your new chapter.
Best of luck.
Thank you very much. Yes. I'm looking forward to
Good
it.
luck, Jane.
Thank
Best of
you.
luck, Jane.
Thank you. I'll see some of you on Facebook, so
For sure.
have to keep up. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night, all.
You too. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
This thing stop recording.